Section B, Corporate Finance, Asset 2. Danny Chen was recently hired as a manager of capital planning for Suzhou Tool Company, a precision tool company located in Fuzhou, China. Chen's first assignment in this new position is to draft a company-wide policy for the development, approval, acquisition, installation, and retirement of capital assets. So many things: development, approval, acquisition, installation, and a retirement, that is decommissioning of capital asset. Once the asset has utilized its overall economic life, it has to be dismantled and it has to be dumped or disposed of. So starting from development till decommissioning, everything is involved with. So in preparation for drafting the new policy, Chen has collected the following information. First, the company uses weighted average cost of capital, WACC, as its hurdle rate for approving capital acquisition. Okay. The company's targeted capital funding structure is 60% should come from equity and 40% should come from debt. Okay, that is 60-40 game. The before tax average cost of debt financing is 10%. That is cost of debt. The risk-free rate is 7%. That is RF. The historical beta for Suzhou Tool Company is 1.0. That is nice because the return on this company's asset or equity are nicely correlated with the return on the market. That's beta is exactly 1. The expected return on all common stocks, return on the market, RM, is 13%. The company's effective income tax rate is 40%. Nicely laid down information, not too much, neither too little. But there are 7 questions. The first question says, define the hurdle rate. First, define, and then explain why the WACC is often appropriate to use as a hurdle rate. First, you need to define hurdle rate. Hurdle rate is the minimum acceptable rate. That is the rate a project should jump or should cross in order to be profitable. Like, I want my project to earn at least 10%. 10% is hurdle rate. Like for you people, 360 is the hurdle rate. You need 360 at least to get through the exam. For certain companies, they have set a certain return. Any project must cross that return in order to become acceptable. So hurdle rate is the minimum acceptable rate for the company if a company need to consider a project. That's how we define hurdle rate. Now, next is, sometimes this acceptable rate is also called the required rate of return. Next, it says why the WACC is often appropriate to use as a hurdle rate. Very simple reason. The reason is that company doesn't use a single source of finance. We have 4 different sources of finance, namely equity, which you call common stock, retained earnings, preferred stock, and debt. Since we have multiple sources of finance and each source of finance has its unique cost, so we have to use the weighted average cost of all these funds. I'm sure you would have gone through the text of this chapter. So weighted average cost of capital is the aggregated average cost of different sources of finance we use, right? So that is the reason hurdle rate most often is considered as WACC, our average cost of capital, right? WACC represents various sources of finance that a company employs in projects. That's why WACC is used as a desired or a hurdle rate for return. And then you can develop this idea here in a proper wording. Do not overdo things. Just define in the first line, couple of lines, what is hurdle rate, and then define why we take WACC, because we use multiple sources of finance and we need to consider their cost in an aggregate average cost. Next, it says calculate weighted average cost of capital. Okay, going back to the assay type. We need 60% weightage from equity, 40% from debt. And what have we been given? We have just equity and debt. Cost of equity and cost of debt are to be calculated. Cost of debt has already been given. It is given as before tax average cost of debt is 10%. We know how to find the cost of debt formula. I'm sure you have gone through. Cost of debt is coupon into 1 minus tax rate. 10% is given as the rate on debt financing. Since interest on debt financing is tax deductible, so it must be multiplied with 1 minus tax rate. Tax rate has been given as 40%. So if you simplify, it's going to be 6%. Next, we need the cost of equity. For your syllabus CMA Part 2, you have two ways to calculate the cost of equity. First is the CAPM, capital asset pricing model, that involves risk-free rate, beta, return on the market minus risk-free rate. And second is the dividend discount model, in which you use cost of equity is equal to expected dividend D naught into 1 plus G upon the dividend discount model. Let me write it down. Cost of equity D naught into 1 plus G upon current market price plus G. I hope it is visible. This is the second formula that we might be using to calculate the cost of equity. We can't use this one here, because we do not have the current market price P naught. We don't have the dividend. We do not have the growth rate in earnings or dividends. We do not have this formula. We can't use. The only possibility for us is to use capital asset pricing model, because we have been given the risk-free rate, that is 7%. We have been given beta, that is 1.0. Return on the market is 13%, and the risk-free rate is 7. Right? So 13 minus 7, that is 6. 6 plus 7, that will give you 13. It means the overall return expected from cost of equity is 13%. In the first question, you just have to calculate the returns. You don't need to calculate the weighted, or did it say so? Let us see. Did it require the computation of calculate WACC? Fine. So we have calculated these two, cost of debt and cost of equity, and now we need to go for the WACC. We have the numbers here. These are the two, 13% and 6%. Now you just have to calculate the weighted average cost of capital. How do we do that? Simply take the percentages they were given. 60% of the funding were to be considered from equity and the 40% from debt. So WACC is going to be 60% from equity, that is 16% of 13%, plus 40% of debt, and debt here is 6%. So calculating these in a single go, 60% of 13 plus 40% of 6 gives you weighted average cost of capital of 10.2%, right? 10.2% it is. Don't overdo. You just don't have to write. You just have to calculate. You just have to calculate. This is just the text given in your suggested solution. You just have to calculate. So you just need to write down the cost of debt through the formula, write down the cost of equity in a single line, calculate the weighted average cost of capital. Do not overdo things, because we will always be short on time on your CMA exam. So much to be done and very little time. So writing these niceties is not needed. When we use the formula, this one, K is equal to RF plus beta, he knows we have used the capital asset pricing model. No need to tell them, because your examiner is most probably a qualified CMA. So done. 10.2 is the answer. 10.2 is the weighted average cost of capital. Next question says, explain the importance of beta in the capital asset pricing model and explain the importance of beta in Shuzu's weighted average cost of capital. We have discussed beta previously. It's the measure of risk. It's the volatility, or it's a measure of systematic risk. Beta is the measure of movement of the price of a particular stock compared to the movement of the market as a whole during the same period. And we have seen the beta could have possible 3 values: less than 1, greater than 1, or equal to 1. And we have discussed these. So why beta is important to CAPM? Because it helps us determining the cost of capital. As per this formula, as you can see, beta is equal to cost of equity is equal to risk-free rate plus beta times RM minus RF. So beta helps us determining the required rate of return on equity, right? And beta itself incorporates the equity risk portion of Shuzu's corporation, because beta is used in equity. Cost of equity is equal to risk-free rate plus beta. For debt, we have a separate formula. So these are the reasons why beta is important in computation of weighted average cost of capital, right? Next question. Explain the importance of changes in net working capital in a capital budgeting process and identify which project time period may be affected by changes in net working capital. Those of you who have already done section E, investment decisions, they know that when we decide to undertake a capital project, it involves certain investments during the life of the project. Most importantly, if a project has 5 years life, maximum investments are made in the period 0, which is called now. You would need investment for capital assets, right? Installation, acquisition. At this particular point, you also need to make certain investment in working capital, because having a plant is not enough. Having a plant is not enough. You need to invest in working capital. Working capital means you need to invest in cash, you need to have balance in bank, you need to have a inventory to sell, you need to have account receivables, money needed to run your operations. Working capital is required. So this working capital is needed at the start of the project, and sometimes when the business grows, the needs of working capital also grow over the period. And when the project is over, all these invested working capital during the life of the project is recovered at the end of the project. Right? So it explain the importance of changes in net working capital in capital budgeting, because working capital is needed in capital budgeting, because long-lived assets will generate cash, but in order to maintain operations of the business, we need working capital. Working capital will be needed at the start of the project. As the project grows, we need more working capital during the life, and once the project is terminated, all the working capital invested so far would be recovered at the end of the life of the project. So this is how working capital changes, and the importance of working capital and how its needs changes during the period of the project. So primarily it is needed at the start of the project and at the end. That's what you will discuss. Capital investment requires investment in working capital, inventory, account receivables, accounts payable. Period 0 involves outflow. That's the point where you invest. And finally, when the project is terminated, that's the point where you receive inflows, right? Or your working capital is recovered. And as I said, when the project grows, working capital investment can be made during the life of the project also, if the revenue goes up. But the overall idea stays the same. Working capital investment is made at the start of the period and it is recovered at the end of the period, and it might require further investments during the project life if the revenue goes up. You can explain within these 3 lines, and it would be sufficient. What is working capital requirement and where is it needed? It's needed at the start, it is recovered at the end of the life of the project. Next, question number 5. Explain how depreciation and income taxes affect cash flows in the capital budgeting for a project. This is specifically a section E question, investment decisions. But you need little knowledge. We have some questions specifically related to, but lots of questions. There are so many questions on essays relating to section E. I think 6 to 7. These were the questions that I could extract that related more to section B than to E. But nonetheless, there are certain questions. They are specifically related to section E. So explain how depreciation and income taxes affect cash flows in the capital budgeting process. Depreciation is a non-cash expense, and it must not be considered, depreciation itself, depreciation expense must not be considered as a cash outflow because it's a non-cash expense. So it is added in net income to arrive at the cash flow from operating activities. First, depreciation is a non-cash expense, so it must be ignored, or if you are starting from net income, the depreciation is added to the net income to arrive at the cash flow from operations. Then, income taxes cannot be ignored. You can't ignore death and taxes. These are the two inevitables, death and taxes. Income taxes cannot be ignored. Cash tax payments must be considered as an outflow in our project. Right? So income taxes and depreciation, they are both considered. Depreciation is a non-cash expense and income taxes are cash payments. So depreciation is a non-cash item to be added in net income to arrive at cash flows. One important point you must remember, sometimes in the question we have been given the tax depreciation and the accounting depreciation. Remember all of your questions, whichever software you're using, Gleim, Hawk or Wiley, the computation of net present value is based upon tax rules, tax book values, tax depreciations, right? That's an important point to remember. We have been given the accounting depreciation and tax depreciation, accounting book value, tax book value. We must use the tax depreciation, tax book value in every project, right? If there is not, we have to make an adjustment, right? So cash taxes must be considered as an outflow, and as we discussed, depreciation is considered as a non-cash item and must be added in the net income, right? And this is how we discussed these same points in a proper way, and a couple of paragraphs will be sufficient. Next, identify and explain one method Chen can use to account for uncertainty in cash flows forecast. Cash flow uncertainty, risk. He can use probabilities. He can use probabilities as, like, for example, he can draw up a probability distribution this way, that cash flows can be 10,000 per year, this is 50% probable. Cash flows can be 12,000, that is 10% probable. Cash flows can be 18,000, that is 40% probable. So he can construct an expected value model like this using probability distribution, and he can come up with the expected cash flows. So he can use probabilities to come up with to draw the possible cash flows. He can use the certainty equivalent approach we discussed in the previous essay type 1. He can use certainty equivalent approach. He can also use adjusted discount rate to incorporate the risk. If a project has a higher risk, we can incorporate a higher discount rate. If a project has a less risk, we can take a lower discount rate for that particular project. So just you need to identify one method and explain. I have given 3. Don't overdo. 1 means 1. Identify and explain. Even this single one would be enough. Assign probabilities and explain, right? Don't overdo things. This is overdone. I would say my suggested approach is just take assigned probabilities, and your answer in 3 lines is sufficient. This one, till here. Rest of it is unnecessary. So I am emphasizing exactly what you need to do. Exactly follow what is required. To the point. Done. Last question. Define the capital budget post-completion audit and explain the role of post-completion audit in the capital budgeting process. It's a very important point. Once we have invested a lot of money in a capital budget and the project has a 5 years life, after the life of the project, we must conduct an audit which is called the post-completion audit to see what we expected at the start of the project and what did happen over the life of the project. Right? That will help us a lot in the future. Post-completion audit is conducted after the completion of the project, after the life of the project. It will bring out so many things that were hidden, so many overestimations, so many ambitiousness given by our managers. Do this or this. Sometimes some project managers portray a rosy picture. A project is worthwhile, it will make company rich and this will bring so much cash for the company. We want to identify those managers who overstated revenues, who just painted a rosy picture. So this is for the evaluating the result of a capital budgeting project after the life of the project. It helps management to exert discipline in the investment planning and control process, because if in a company we have a policy to conduct this post-completion audit, every project manager will think 100 times before trying to paint a rosy picture. He will not overestimate the goodness of a project or the viability of the project. So exert a discipline in the investment planning and control process. Managers will take care because they will know that they have to give authentic numbers, the numbers that can be verified at the end of the life. They will not try to paint a good result. In fact, the project might not be worthwhile at the end, right? So just 2 or 3 points, and you can just describe in your words. The post-completion audit is conducted with a view for organizational learning so that the mistakes we made in this project are not repeated. It will help the management to make better decisions in the future. It will help the manager to exert discipline in the investment planning process to avoid mistakes, and it will also identify the managers who overestimated the viability of the projects so that in the future they will take care and do not overpaint the things to make it look more viable than they actually are. So that completes your essay type 2 as well.